I'm Bob Henderson. I'm the Nomad Dad. I got a kick out of some of Bill Maher's latest comments. Harvard makes you stupid, essentially. What did he say? I want to read this to get the quote correct. He urged youngsters not to go to college, especially the elite schools, probably meaning the Ivy League schools. And by the way, he went to Cornell, which is Ivy League. He says, do not go to those schools, quote, because it just makes you stupid. If ignorance is a disease, Harvard Yard is the Wuhan wet market. College, this is the great debate today. A couple of things, background. It's extremely expensive, which is why we're having the big arguments over the student loan and the payback. It's one of those things, as you know, I was in the investment business for close to 40 years, and I remember in the 80s going to the continuing education classes. And back then they were talking about, and this was a period of some inflation still, in the aftermath of the 1970s. And they were talking about how tuition inflation was far outpacing inflation in the overall economy. So this has been going on for decades. And it's largely because the government throws a lot of money at the schools. And the government throws money, and that means they go out and hire more, and they build new buildings. And the kids are living probably in nicer places than they may have when they were at home. And I'll give you a perfect example. As you also know, I was in radio for 25 years, and I worked at some major stations, and those studios, in large part, were never as nice as some of the studios at the colleges. And so those kids are learning on equipment that they'll never have in the real world. It'll never be that nice. They'll never work in surroundings that are that nice. It's not the real world, and I think this money gets spent. It drives up the costs. Okay, so there's a lot of tuition inflation. So should we be going to college? I think Bill Maher says, well, he's not saying don't go to college. He's just saying the elite schools make you stupid. And it's been my view for some time that the Ivy League schools you go to, not so much to get a first-class education, but to make contacts. So it's who you know. So if you're in high positions in corporate America or in politics, it's who you know. And you know, sometime back I did the presidential birthplace tour, which was on this YouTube channel. And it came up about one of the presidents going to Yale, and he was one of 5. And I asked the trivia question, well, what's the school with the most presidential grads? And it's Harvard with 8. So there's almost close to a third of the U.S. presidents have come from Harvard and Yale. And this goes back to the beginning, and more so in the last 100 years from those schools. It's who you know. I think, and I've been told that the best educations are at the schools at the next level from those places. I can give you an example. I got accepted at what was supposedly Harvard of the South, William and Mary, back in the 70s, and I opted not to go for a variety of reasons. But maybe schools like that where you get better education than you would at the actual Ivy League school. This is what I've been told. I mean, I haven't gone to all the schools, so how am I the judge? This is what I've been told by people more in the know than I am. Maybe they've sent the kids to different schools. Maybe they're in higher education and their comments therefore carry more weight. My main concern with colleges, first of all, I don't think it's absolutely necessary that you go to college in this day and age. If you're going to be a professional, yeah, you need to go to college. I think whatever it is that you do, you probably need some kind of advanced training. So that may be a year or two in some kind of a vocation. Pick any place. If you're going to be a nurse or you're going, I mean, there may be some extra school involved. If you're going to be in a particular trade, you may need to go to some kind of a trade school for a while. These are very important jobs. You're going to need some extra education beyond high school, but whether it's college or not, I think remains to be seen, especially with the high costs. And here's the other thing that really bothers me. Colleges, for the most part, have always been left of center. Okay, fine. But when I went to school, it was a lot more about free speech on campus. Colleges are supposed to be about free speech. They're supposed to be about the discovery of the truth. And they're anything but that today. They're cramming an ideology down your throats. They're cramming, and they will not allow any dissent, either from those on campus or you try to be a speaker who has a certain point of view that's not acceptable. Those people are going to be hooted down. I mean, this is this is one of the major reasons we have the problems in the country today, because we're afraid to debate. Or somebody thinks, well, my idea is the only way and that everybody else is full of it. No, we got to be able to hear all. We've got to be able to hear all sides and be taught to think for ourselves, not what to think. And the colleges don't do this anymore. One of the things that I found when I went to college, and I really appreciated this, I was in a history class. Now, I never learned this in high school, but I learned about a woman named Sally Hemings. Sally Hemings was the mistress of Thomas Jefferson, and apparently they had children together. And, this is not the airbrush story of the great American, the man that wrote the Declaration of Independence and is one of the great historical Americans of all time, and he did a lot of good things. But this was a little bit more sordid, and this, when I was growing up, was not the sort of thing that was typically taught, okay? And I'm saying I'm glad I heard about that when I was 18 or 19 years old. So that gives me something else to think about rather than be given the airbrush story of how wonderful everybody was. I think they were great men at the founding, but they had their flaws. Let's talk about that. Everybody has their flaws. Let's go to college and learn to think, not be told what to think. It's dividing the country. I think you're beginning to see some push back now from major law firms now that are saying we will not hire you if you espouse certain violent views. You're hearing some portfolio managers on Wall Street say, I will not give money to such and so school, my alma mater anymore. So far, I've seen most of the college presidents say, well, who cares? But maybe at some point, reality will sink in. So I think Bill Maher's onto something. He's not necessarily saying don't go to college, but these Ivy League schools are losing their way, and I think his point is very well taken. Maybe go to a secondary school and actually get a good education. Learn to think rather than being told what to think. On the other hand, Bulletin, the Nomad Capitalist himself, Andrew Henderson, did not, well, he attended college, but did not graduate. Has that held him back? He's one of the smartest, most learned people I know. And he did not need to go to college. Not everybody does. I'm Bob Henderson. I'm the Nomad Dad.